welcome back to this tutorial. So in the last episode we started building a simple UI and a mock data access layer for our backend. And today we're going to replace that fake data access layer with a real Google Spreadsheet as a data source. So let's dive into this episode. So if you take back the class diagram, we're going to implement the Google Spreadsheet data access. Okay, so first we start by going to Google Cloud Console. So you need a Google account to do that. You have to first create a project. So you go to New Project. Select the project name. Click on Create. Then you select your project and start working. So what you need to do after that, you have to activate the Google Spreadsheet API. So you click on API and Services. Then enable APIs and Services. Then you have to search for Google Sheets API. You click on the API to enable it. Click on Enable. Okay, now when it's done, we have to create an API key to access our Google Sheets for reading. For that purpose, you go to Credential, create credentials, then API key. It is going to create a new API key for us. You don't have to copy it for the moment, we will do it later. For security reasons, I strongly invite you to restrict the key to the Google Spreadsheets API. Okay. You can also restrict to some use cases, but we're not going to do that for the moment. Then you can save. Now we are going to create our spreadsheet. So you go to this URL and you create a blank spreadsheet. Okay. And we have to create our data structure. So create an ID column, question, answer, and we tell if we want to show the question or not. Then we put some IDs, some questions. So you have show or not. You can add a drop down if you like. It's easier to switch between the two values. And some style for the header too. something like that. And maybe, okay. And last but not least, we have to allow permission to access to the sheet. So you go to share. You have to name it first. And you switch restricted to anyone with the link. And done. So now our spreadsheet is shared and saved to the Google Cloud platform. Okay. Now let's try the API. So let's visit the Google developer website. Alright, so here is the documentation for reading spreadsheets value. So you have the REST keyword, HTTP keyword, HTTP address of the API, and some variable you have to fulfill in order to call. So you have the spreadsheet ID and the range. So we are going to test it with curl. Let's open a console or a terminal as you wish. So let's do a get and input our URL. Where do we find the spreadsheet ID? We find it in our document, in the URL document. It is this string of this part of the URL is the spreadsheet ID. We have to paste it in there. And the range, you can select cells, but you can just put the name of the sheet. So we're going to do that. So you add batch get ranges equals sheet 1, which is the name of this sheet. Then we have to add as a last argument the API key we created precedently. So you're going to your console to retrieve the value. You can copy to clipboard and paste the value like that, and it should be good. So now it's good. As you can see, we retrieve a JSON value of spreadsheet ID and value ranges with the header row and our questions and answer with their respective values. Okay, now that we know how to call Google's API, let's implement it in our backend. Okay, so let's create our data access class implementing the interface we created last time. So we created in include and we create it as Google Sheet data access.hpp. So as I told you last time, we create all in HPP file. It's not the ideal way of doing things, but it's more convenient for this tutorial, so I'll do it like that. Okay, so let's add our usual headers. Okay, let's create our class. So it is implementing our interface. So let's open it to show. What we did last time. So we have this interface that defines some functions, create question and get all validated questions. So we're going to implement the second one for Google Spreadsheet. So maybe we could copy and paste this line. Okay, that's good. So we have to add an implementation for those lines. We will do this one for a next episode, during a next episode, but the second one we're going to do it now. Okay. All right. So what do we need? First, we're going to define some fields. So I'm going to hide the tree. We don't need the tree for the moment. And we're going to add some private fields because this class is not stateless, it's a stateful class. We have some dynamic things we have to store. First is the client for HTTP. So previously we used curl, and now we're going to use HTTP lib. So we have a client we need to initialize to the Spreadsheet Google API. Okay. Then, as you saw with the example with curl, we need our spreadsheet ID. We store it as a string, a stud string. We need the spreadsheet tab name, like it was sheet 1 in the example, and we need the API key. Okay. So in order to fill these fields, we need a constructor. So let's do that. Let's do some public construction. So we take the same name as the class and we add some fields. Okay, so what do we need? We need spreadsheet ID. We need API key, and last we need the tab. Okay, let's initialize our private fields. Not like that. I don't know what's wrong with my clipboard this morning, but it's not working as expected. Okay, and we add an empty constructor. Okay, so we have some header to add in order to be able to use HTTP lib. So we have to include this header, and we also have to define the support for SSL because the Google Spreadsheet API is on HTTPS, so we need OpenSSL to do calls in a secure manner. Now, how to call the actual API with this lib? We do it like that. Going to close interface, we don't need it anymore, and it is going to be easier for you to see. So we instantiate, we reuse our private client we declared here. So it will add at the end of this base URL our sub URL with the spreadsheet ID concatenated to the root URL. We had the tab and the API key as we constructed with curl precedently. It's the same idea. Same URL, same idea. Okay? And we store our response in the res variable, local variable. Now we are going to see how to handle the response. So we have to test. We have to test if our body is empty or not. Okay. And if it is not empty, let's display it for debugging purpose. You could use your own logging framework, of course, but it is out of the scope of our tutorial today. So let's just print in the console, print the body of the response. Then of course we have to prepare our return value. It is a form of a vector of FAQ row. So you remember FAQ row from the last time. It is our class for storing raw data. Okay, it is our return value. And we have to parse the body because, as you saw in curl example, maybe I can call it back again. Yes. So as you can see, our body is JSON, and we have to parse it to manipulate it in our memory. So let's do that. For that, we are going to use an Allman JSON library. So let's do the appropriate includes, and let's go back to our code. So we declare our sheet like so, and we parse the body of the response. Okay. So now we can browse our lines from the JSON object named sheet. It is like browsing an array or a map with values being the keys, value ranges like that, and we take the first element Then we take the values and we retrieve like that our lines. Let's check our curl method again, so you can stick with me. So we have our JSON object sheet representing this. We navigate to value ranges, which give us an array of elements. We take the first one because there's only one, and we go to the values, which returns an array of containing the lines of our spreadsheet. Okay, so we have our lines and we're going to use them in the following of our program. Okay, first we check the emptiness of the return. Okay, we need to erase the first line because it contains the header of the spreadsheet, and we don't need the header. We don't want to display the header. So for that we use the erase method on the vectors because it is a vector, and we pass the first iterator of the vector with the begin method. Then we are going to iterate over our lines with a for loop. You can do a for each lambda, but for this time I will do it with a for loop because I think it's more visual for that. So we retrieve we retrieve the third field of our line, which contains the third column, the fourth column, because the first it starts at 0. So let's check again with the curl. Okay, you know, the first, second, third, and the fourth. So the fourth column contains show yes or no. So it's true if we return the line, and false if we discard the line. Okay, so that's what I do here. It's a conversion from the string to the Boolean value, and we only do the rest of the method if we decide to show the line. Okay, let's clean a little bit. Okay, so if we decided to show the line, we're going to create a FAQ row object for each element, but it can fail, so we are going to encapsulate it in a try-catch. I'll show you why it is potentially a failable code. So let's take a look. We create our instance of FAQ row, and we start retrieving fields. So we have the row ID in a string format, which is the first element of the line. And then we have to convert to an integer. Okay, so we use a string to integer, and this method can fail if the input string is out of range, or if the input string is not a valid integer. So that's why we have to encapsulate this code in try-catch. Okay, then we have the question which is taken as is from the second field of our JSON. We have the response, which is the third. And we have the show, which is always true because of we are in a if block. And this method only returns validated row, so it is always true. Then I will quickly add the catch part of this try. Okay. Then lastly, we have to return some value. So if everything went fine after the loop, so it's line, I guess, here. After the loop, everything went okay. Oh, I forgot something. We have to add the FAQ row to the return value because other way it won't be populated for our color. So we push back the element in the return vector. Okay. Then after the loop, which is line 11, okay, we return our optional containing return value. That's okay. So now, if anything is contrary to that, we return a stud null opt. All right, so I think we are good. We're going to compile and check if everything is fine with that. So let's compile. Oh, since we are not using the class, nothing is going to happen. So we have to modify our main.cpp, of course, to use it. So remember the last time we used the mock data access. So now we're going to use the real one. So firstly, we have to include, of course, because we're going to use it. Then we declare it next to our mock data access, so like that. Google Sheet data access. Google data access. And we have to use a constructor with a spreadsheet ID, the API key as the second argument. So I'm going to retrieve it from Google console. Here it is. Copy to clipboard. Then paste. And last is the sheet one. I think we are good. So now we have our instance of data access. We must replace as the interface. Let's do the replace. Now we want to use this new class instead of the mocked one. And I think we are good. Now we can compile and test. Okay, let's compile. Okay, so now let's start our program. and let's check if it's good. Oh yeah, okay, it's working. Let's modify our boolean just to check if everything fine. So I do it live, obviously. Okay, it's working. Let's hide it back. Maybe I can add a question, for example. So let's add a question. ID 3. What time is it? 11:33. And let's show. Okay, true. And okay, it's working fine. Okay, now there's one last thing I'd like to do. Let's open our main.cpp. As you can see, we have hard-coded our variables containing the document ID here, the IPI key, and the sheet, the tab. I'd like to show you how you can use an external config file to store these informations. It would be easier for later configurability, and it would be a little bit cleaner to do it from an external file. So let's modify our main.cpp to do that. So first we have to check the number of arguments of the program. So we need something like that. Spare to 2. It's because argc contains the command line and the option. So the command line would be FAQ and the option would be the name of the file. So we need at least 2, and if there are more, the later are going to be ignored, and we're only going to be interested in the second argument. Okay. So let's open the file with the stud if stream. And pass the file name, which is argv of 1. Argv of 0 would be the name of the program again. So we use our JSON parser like we did for the JSON stream from the Google API, but this time we're going to parse the file stream instead of a string coming from the network. We use the file stream. So we have a JSON config object containing the content of our config file. Finally, we parse into a config variable, and we can use this object for our constructor. So I'm going to do it a little bit faster. Okay. As you can see, I'm reusing the config object and calling the key from the JSON file. Now let's create our file. So I'm going to create a config file into the root of our project, config.json. Okay. So let's compile and check if everything is working as expected. I forgot something, closing the if in the main, so and it's working with the config file, as you can see. That's a bit cleaner, isn't it? So that wraps up our episode for today. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, we're going to see how to write a new question to our spreadsheet through our website. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.